What's going on, boys and girls, and welcome back to another episode of Eating Shit. So, observation from this week, at the advice of, or at the direction of my coach, his name's Chris, talked about him on here before. Once a week, I have been going to dinner with other business owners in town, just like one-on-one type setting. And the whole point of this is really, there's no like agenda, there's no like pitching, there's no let's work together. It's just more so of like a iron sharpens iron type conversation every time. And it's actually been super productive for me because I think that business owners have like a unique set of problems that probably non-business owners don't have, just different problems, not better or worse. But it's interesting to go to dinner with more and more business owners. And I feel weird as fuck reaching out to people and asking them to go to dinner because like usually you ask people to go to coffee or to lunch or something like that. And you know, it's dinner, and I don't know if that's just me feeling weird about it, but like hardly anyone ever says no. So I guess it's not that weird, or everyone would say no. But I think that like dinner kind of gives like a different, probably like a bit of a different conversation than a lunch or a coffee would. One, you have more time, and two, it's just a different setting that you can kind of go deeper with them on things, and inevitably you end up talking business, and that's about it. So that's kind of the whole point of the dinners. But you know, the more people I go to, or the more dinners I go to with the same type of people, like no matter where you're at in the journey, it's like everyone I've talked to has the same exact problems. It's like the same problems that we have, and it's the same problems in this business, this business, this business. It's all exactly the same. And, you know, usually, I mean, it boils down to either marketing, sales, or operations, and that's about it, or some variation of those departments. But mostly it's like a sales problem. I think that in real estate, like whether it's investment or real estate sales or whatever, sales is like a common, like everyone knows that you have to know sales, or you have to have a sales process. And if you don't, you figure it out pretty quick. And when you look at some people that can do it and you're like, what are they doing differently than me? Like that's the answer. So everyone knows that it's important. But it's interesting to see other businesses that they have no clue. And then for those guys, it's always a sales problem, and not sales in the sense of like, we need to sell more things, we're not making enough money. It's just like not even having a sales process at all. And the observation is just like, it's not that everyone has a sales problem. The observation is just like all business is exactly the same. Like no matter what industry it is, it's like you swap out, you take like the skeleton or the structure of what we do, and you can replace it with like any product or any service. And for the most part, like the business part is exactly the same. So that's what's so interesting about these conversations, is that like sometimes it's really hard to take your own advice because you're like in it all day, every day. So when you're just submerged in this, doing this one thing, it's like you can't really stick your head up very easily and be like, oh, like that's our problem, that's what we should be doing, when you're stuck in the actual like day-to-day tasks of the business. But as soon as someone else says like, this is what's going on in our business, you can easily be like, oh, just do this, or like, oh, you should try this. Or it's like, well, I'm not sure if this would work for you guys, but like, this is how we do it. And you can explain something like, take the sales process for an example, and you can just apply that to any type of business that, you know, any industry. With all the people that I've gone to dinner with, it's all exactly the same. And I think that's actually what's really cool about it too, is because like, yeah, you do business to like make a living for yourself, but it's really, for me at least, it's like more about building the skill set of business. And then that's what I can apply later on to better businesses or better opportunities within business. And it's just one of those things. It's like, you don't know what you don't know, and you have to build the skills along the way. And knowing what I know now, like if I had to, I could go start a landscaping company. And because of what I've learned from operating the real estate company, I would treat it exactly the same. It's like, first we need this, then we need this. These are the people that we need. These are the operation components that we need, marketing, sales. It's all exactly the fucking same. And I think that's really cool, because you can apply whatever you learn to any type of business. Like, yeah, there's going to be nuances about like the trade or like fulfillment or, you know, different industries and stuff like that. But the structure and the skeleton of the company is, for the most part, exactly the same. And like a good example of this, and I know I talked about this on the other podcast, Go to Bed, but I didn't talk about it on here. So over the summer, I had this kid do landscaping at my house. So initially I wanted some turf for my side yard, like the smallest amount of turf. And this is also an example of how low the bar is for like most businesses. Like, it's actually insane how bad people are. But initially I wanted this turf, right? And I did the measurements, like it's 120 square feet of turf. Okay. And I just like reached out. I think I put out not an ad, but like inquiry on like Angie's List or something like that. So same exact thing that we do. Like, people pay for leads. They pay Angie's List. Angie's List supplies them with leads. I was the lead in this case. And then, you know, they are responsible. They already paid for the lead. Now they got to get back to you and try to get the business. Okay. Same exact thing we do. We get leads, and then we get back to the sellers and we take appointments and try to buy the house. Same exact shit. But with turf, like, I couldn't get anyone to do it. Like, it was insane how bad it was. You know, it's like, and I did everything, and I did this on purpose, so maybe this annoyed people, but in the Angie's List thing, I was like, I need turf. Here are the measurements. Email me. Like, email is my preferred, you know, form of communication or whatever, because that way I can stay organized and I don't have to worry about answering 5 million calls from unknown numbers. So, hardly anyone emailed me. They're all trying to call. Didn't follow instructions. The few people that did email me, I got back to them. And I think I booked 4 people to come and, like, you know, they got to come like walk the job to like give me a quote. I don't really understand why, because like I already did all the work for them. I'm like, here's the shape, here's the measurements. You know, this is what it is. So I understand like a little bit, because I don't know everything about turf. Like, they got to look at, you know, what the excavation is and or whatnot, but it's like, you know, it's a flat surface. They could easily find out these things over a phone call, but you got to book the appointment. Okay, cool. So I booked the appointment with 4 people. 2 of them didn't show up at all, which mind blowing. Like, they pay for a lead, and then the lead actually talks to them, which it's hard enough to get your leads to respond. And then they don't even show up for their own appointment. And then the one guy gave me a quote first. He shows up, and then the quote went, I think it was like $1,600, and then the quote goes up to $2,200 after he walks it. And I'm like, okay, what changed? He's like, oh, well, you know, we can't really honor the quote because I haven't seen it yet. I'm like, okay, whatever. Okay, cool. Well, like, you know, send me the official bid or whatever. Oh, yeah. Okay. Walks away. Never heard from him again. Didn't get the actual bid. I'm like, okay. And then this other dude came out, and he was fine. I was going to go with him. And then specifically about this kid that ended up doing the landscaping, I got a notice from the HOA that you got to redo your driveway. I'm like, okay, sweet. So now I'm looking for that, and I get a Facebook ad from a landscaping company that shows like that they did concrete. I'm like, all right, cool. Like, I'll start the process over just for the freaking concrete. I haven't even taken care of the turf yet. And so I reach out to a few different people, much the same experience, where it's like, I submitted the form, so they paid for this lead because they're doing Facebook advertising. Never heard from them. I had to follow up with them. And then same exact thing. Like, he didn't try to qualify me. Like, obviously this is a bit different situation, because like I had the measurements for the driveway. So reasonably he could say like, okay, I know this is like a $6,000 job or whatever it's going to be. maybe we should like see if this person is able to pay that much. No qualifying, just set the appointment. Okay. So I go, he comes, he, measures it. Seemed like very half-assed to me, but if that's what he needed to do, that's what he needed to do. Gave me the quote. I'm like, all right, cool. Thanks. While you're here, I want to get this turf done. Look at the turf. Measures that. Gives me another quote that didn't seem like too detail-oriented, but okay. I'm like, all right, cool. Well, I mean, I kind of want to do the front yard. So like I want no maintenance here. So like rock and DG and that's it. Okay, cool. Took some measurements and like altogether, he's like, okay, it's going to be 11,800. But I can do it all for 11,000. I was like, okay, cool. Send me the bid. Walks away. And then I had to follow up with him for the bid. And that's really what got me thinking about like, oh, all business is the same before I started doing these dinners with people, is that the landscaping kid, literally the same exact business model that we're in, but our service is like providing the easy button for property owners to sell their house. His service is to do the landscaping, but the acquisition is exactly the same, the marketing and the sales. Like he pays for leads. They have to get back to the leads. They should be qualifying the leads. And then he has an appointment where he goes and like bids the job the same way that we go and present an offer. And just like the obvious holes, because our business is so competitive and clearly theirs is not, because you can't even get people to show up. So like, I guess you just don't have to be good to make money, because like I'm chasing after them like, hey, please let me pay you. And you just like can't get them to do that. The obvious hole with his situation or his process, I was like, this dude has no ability to close. Like one, he obviously didn't have any sales skills. Like he gave me a discount from 11.8 to 11. And that was like his way of making it seem like a good deal, I guess. But even if I was like, okay, let's do it, he would have still left. He would have been like, okay, cool. I'll send you the paperwork when I get back to the office. Where it's like us, that sounds absolutely insane, because you don't have anything until you have a signed purchase agreement from the seller. So if we were like, do all this stuff and go through the sales process and like come to an agreement on price, 300,000. Okay. Yeah. I'm ready to move forward. All right, cool. Well, I guess just hang out for a bit and I'll send you the offer over DocuSign whenever I get a chance. They'd be like, okay. And like, you would never close a deal doing that ever. But that's how they do it in his business. And it was just crazy to see that, because he's doing like high ticket sales. Like that was not a cheap job. And as soon as he walked away, like that gave me time to think about it and try to negotiate with him further. So I ended up getting more stuff for less money, and he probably could have closed me right there. But even if I agreed to it, no way for me to commit or sign or anything like that. So it was just like a crazy experience. And then the fulfillment on his service was also terrible. So I was just going to like volunteer my unsolicited advice and be like, hey, you should like change your sales process, because you could like double or triple your business without doing anything extra, just being better. But then the fulfillment was so bad, I was like, oh, forget it. Like, I don't even want to talk to him anymore. But it's good to be on the other end of that for the first time, because it made me think about our process and like where we're missing and like what could be better for the sellers and everything like that. So it ended up being a good thing. But, just kind of speaking to the same point that like, no matter what business you're in and no matter what the product is, the service, the skills that you learn throughout business, if you want to learn them, can be applied to like literally any business. And that's why people that are good at business can make it like look easy, where they can just immediately start something and it makes money the next day pretty much, versus people that are brand new that have to learn the hard way, that most of them never make any money because they fail. And then the ones that do, it takes 10 years to do anything cool. But then on the second one, it takes 6 months and they're already like up and running. So just like anything else, it's just skill set, and you can, use it in the future. I just never knew that when I got into it, that it's like, this is building skills for the future. It's not just like trying to make money and make a living for yourself, right now. So interesting topic. Hopefully you guys can take something from that and all that. But issues this week. So we had 2 renegotiations, and that's like the worst part about our business. And I know a lot of people, I know it's very common, at least in our industry, that people renegotiate with the sellers on purpose. And I have big issues with that, just like morally and ethically. Pretty much like their whole thing is like, and it's true, like once a seller is in contract to sell their house, they are much more likely to take a price reduction because they're almost done. So for example, like you go into contract to sell your house for $300,000. And that was like, your bottom line. And that's like literally your bottom. It's $300,000. Okay, you sign. And then a month later, after due diligence or whatever, you get a call from the buyer that says, oh, like we can still do it, but it has to be $275,000. Psychologically, the seller is much more likely to accept that at that time versus accepting $275,000 a month ago because it was already tough for them to accept $300,000. And a lot of people treat business like that, even if they have a deal. And I don't think that's right. I think you should just like know your numbers up front and do what you say you're going to do. But we had 2 of them this week, both for good reason, both condition issues. And that's the only time that we do renegotiate is when the condition is much worse than what we thought it was going to be when we first contracted the home. And so we had, 2 of them in a week. Those are like the worst calls for our acquisition manager to make. I've had to make them before. It's not fun for anyone. That's why we try not to do them. And especially like if you don't absolutely have to, we don't even do it anyway. But again, like that made me think like we don't even really have a process for renegotiation. Like we have some like scripting, like we know what to say on the calls, but we don't have like a solid process for it. So that ended up being like a good thing is that, I got to spend some time yesterday and really dig into that process and what that should look like for us when we do have to do it. And it also gave me some time to look back in the last year and look at every deal that we have had to renegotiate. And it's pretty interesting what I found. We've had to do it 10 times in the last year, and we were successful on 9 of them. And out of those 10, 9 of them were deals that we closed over the phone. And so makes total sense. We ask all the right questions up front where we try to get a good idea of what the condition of the home is before we make an offer so we can really run our numbers tight and not have to renegotiate. But when we can't go and walk it to present the offer, we're wrong a lot because some of it is sellers misrepresenting to us, but other times like they don't even really know the condition, or it's like so subjective on like what's good and what's not that we just end up underestimating the rehab when we do it over the phone versus the same exact first phone call, but then we go in person and walk the property. Our acquisition manager knows enough about rehab that he's going to go and take photos before he presents the offer. Photos get uploaded on the spot. So then he'll step out and call us and be like, hey, this looks heavier. Like the condition is worse. Like this is messed up, whatever. So then we can check out the photos on the fly when he's still there with the seller, adjust the numbers, and then we contract it for the right number. So it makes sense why it happens more often than not over the phone. But just kind of an interesting, like hard data point that one data point that I didn't pull is like how many that we didn't have to renegotiate that were over the phone. But either way, it just speaks that, only one of those that we actually walked did we have to renegotiate. They were all over the phone. So it's just something that we know moving forward, like if we have to do it over the phone, it's much, much more likely that we're going to have to renegotiate because the condition is going to be worse than we think once we finally do get access during due diligence. And then wins for this week. Got one of those renegotiations done. The other one is still pending, but looking pretty good. So, it's always great when that happens and we can still make it work, even though the numbers aren't what either us or the seller was expecting. And we also closed one deal yesterday. So that's good. We have a lot in the pipeline to close this month, but there's always drama and delays and this and that. So you never know. So it's always a win when you actually get one closed and you get the email from title that says this one's on record, because that's when it's like a done deal. It actually happened and there is no possibility of it blowing up at this point, because up until that second, there's always a possibility of something going wrong, and things go wrong a lot, as I've talked about on here before. So anyway, that about wraps it up for this episode. Thanks for watching, and we will see you on the next one.